of how we came to this point in our professional development and I'll have the superintendent introduce our speaker. One of the things that we've been discussing since we had our two newest members join us in April was a need for agreement around operating norms. Something else that we noticed in looking at the school committee policies in terms of how we govern ourselves is that the school committee policy states that we will set goals for the year for the school committee. And that we would assess our progress on those goals halfway through and our progress at the end of that school year. So I thought it might be helpful for us to have a third-party facilitator come in and help us to facilitate that discussion around what our operating norms will be and how we will govern ourselves, and depending on how far we get today and then a continued session on August 22nd, hopefully setting a shared goal for the school committee and determining how we're going to assess our success at meeting that goal. Jen, did you have a question?
August 26th or 22nd?
Oh, sorry, 26. You're absolutely correct. Yes. Nope, I've got 22nd on the brain. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that. So any questions in terms of the professional development that we have scheduled for this meeting and how we got to this point? All right, so the Paul Zinni was recommended to us by Dr. Baeta. Dr. Baeta, can you introduce our facilitator?
Thank you, Chris. When we started to talk about professional development and growing norms and having goals as a school committee, which is really something that hasn't happened in the past, the idea was that we go to one of a road that clearly outlined a working group, Guilfoyle in this case, public relations, that works with public schools, which is an area that they really target. I actually just saw them down at the conference this past week. And I have seen their work for many years as a sitting superintendent when they have worked with other school committees and with other school systems because of a crisis situation or just to establish norms and goals. It just happens that the gentleman who also works for them now is a former colleague, and that's Paul Zinni. Paul has had over 35 plus years of public education, if not 40. And worked together as a colleague both in Avon when I was in Holbrook, and then at KP when I was in Norton. And he's been someone that's been doing these presentations and going out to folks, including the association. So I welcome Paul to our working team here.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Will that stay on now that it's on?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. Everything's different here, depending on what system we're in. So, thank you, Dr. Baeta, for giving me a bit of an introduction. I'll take a couple of minutes and give you a little bit more. And we just love to put our headshots up on these things. We're communication people, so it's not enough that you have me here. You get to have that there. I'm going to have it framed for Joe so that he can have it in his office. But just to give you a little bit of a background,
Paul, if I can just pause you for a moment. My vice chair just reminded me that we always open with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Sure.
And I would end my preamble, which I did not do any of that. So I would like to say welcome to the July 22nd special meeting of the Stoughton School Committee. This meeting is being recorded by SMAC for future broadcasting. Please rise if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good catch, Armando. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
My apologies. I was so excited about leaping right into the PD. Okay.
I have that effect on groups. They get so excited they just
Please continue.
miss things along the way. Sure. So, again, I've spent almost 37 years in public education, so not quite 40. And during that time, I started actually in the city of Taunton. I was a special education teacher. I was a general education high school math teacher at one point. I was an early childhood principal. And then I left in 2001, went to Avon, where I spent 17 years, 12 as the assistant superintendent. Those of you who know Avon, it's 4 square miles. So that was basically encompassing everything from special ed director, curriculum and instruction, everything else deemed appropriate by the superintendent. And then the last 5 years I was in Avon, I was the superintendent there. And I finished my career as the superintendent of schools, as Dr. Baeta said, in King Philip. So I spent my last 5 years there. So overall, 37 years for me. I'm married to an educator, so in my house, it's all school all the time. My wife was a teacher as well, 13 years as a principal, and her last 5 as a special education director. So there's a lot of school talk in our house. So that said, I was actually a client of this particular company, John Guilfoyle Public Relations, as Joe mentioned to you. And by the way, I'm not John. We were talking about that earlier. He has us wear the shirts. The business has his name on it. It drives everyone crazy. But they specialize in public relations for municipalities, police, fire, and school districts. So we don't have private clients like Nike or anything like that. We work just with towns, police, fire, and schools, and we help them with their messaging. We actually do everything communication, so everything from website design to public relations, press releases, all of that work. And we have an academy section that is all professional development. So when I was a school superintendent, I used them as a client. I often joke about the Hair Club for Men commercial, for those of you who are old enough to remember it. When I'm not just the president, I'm a client. I was a very happy client, and so I was pleased when I retired that they offered me an opportunity to come and work with them. I do both some of the professional development, but I'm also on the crisis team. So when some of our clients have an uh-oh moment, I'm on that team that works with them to try to move them through that process. So as far as professional development goes, this is a workshop that we do quite frequently. A lot of our school clients will invite us out to come and have conversations with their school committees just to talk about communication in general. So we're going to start internally talking about the communication that you all deal with together, but we also talk about communication external. What happens when you have public comments at meetings and those don't go well, and what happens when you have a crisis within the district? Where's the school committee's role in communication when things are not going well? How does that all work? So all of those pieces come under the conversation about communication and school committees. But for tonight, we thought we would start with the basics, just getting to know all of you and talking about how your operations work. So if you don't mind, there are a few faces I know. Jonathan and I go way back as well from my Avon days, but many of you around the table, I don't know your faces. So if you could just let me know who you are and if you're a school committee member or a staff member in the district, that would be fantastic.
My name is Jillian. I am a school committee member. I was elected this past April.
Fantastic. Nice to meet you, Jillian.
Armando, school committee.
Great. Thank you.
Chris, school committee chair.
Great.
Joe, superintendent.
Fantastic.
Jeff Facia, school committee.
Nice.
Julie Miller, superintendent-elect and high school.
Eileen Perkins, assistant super for finance.
Great.
Matt Colantonio, assistant superintendent of HR, staff wellness.
Fantastic. It's nice to meet you all. We go way back, too. Yes. Years ago, the three of us did a training together, 2 years worth of training that Stoughton hosted for leadership. So that was back in my Avon days, a long time ago. So that being said, I'm going to ask you to take a moment to think about what is it, based on the conversation or the introduction that we've had tonight, that you would like to see us kind of focus on. And that's for me for planning purposes for the future. So I'm just going to ask if in each direction, if you just pass some Post-its along. And this is for me to kind of keep focused on, in the future, it would be great if we could talk a little bit more about this or have expand upon this particular topic so that I have some information to help with our next workshop. Because I also want to make sure that if you've got some areas that you're hoping we're going to cover, that we know about them and we make sure that we do that. So you can take and write, use the Post-its anytime during the course of the meeting. If you think of something, just jot it on down. Oh, Paul moved back that too quickly. I'd like us to maybe come back and revisit that. Also, please don't hesitate to interrupt, to let me know that I moved in a direction that you didn't want to go in, or you have a question. As I said, I was an educator for a lot of years. I'm used to my students, I was a special education teacher, interrupting all the time. I want to make sure that this is something that you find helpful and works for all of you. All right. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about effective school committees and what makes them effective, and how you as a committee can help to move your mission, your district's mission, forward. Okay. So we know, like any organization, excuse me, school committees function best when they are on the same page, when they work collaboratively. And you really are a team. So as a team, what are the components? What are the things that we need to be thinking about? So that last picture was obviously the tug of war that's going on. So I ask you this. When we're looking at that analogy of a tug of war and we're thinking about a team, are we tugging in the same direction? Are we tugging on the opposite ends of the rope? Or is it both? What do you think as a group?
I think for the most part, most of us are on one side.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Okay. Yes.
The tugging may not general direction, but not a straight line, I would say.
Oh, I like that. When you think of we're pulling forward, then we're pulling back, and we maybe push to the side as we're trying to gain our balance. I like that. Other thoughts about that?
I think in general, it's a combination of what they're saying, but I also think it's really understanding the role of what it is to be a school committee member. Mm-hmm. Because as we run, and I did myself after ed reform, you think you have all of this authority, if you will, and it comes down to finances, policy, and the hiring, firing of the superintendent. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's the hard part, is coming to the realization that it doesn't have some of the voting power, if you will, or authorization, and that's just hard.
Yeah, you're exactly right. There are things that we think, and we're going to talk a little bit about what our whys are, why we came to the school committee and such. We're going to talk a little bit about that in just a couple of minutes. When I look at the analogy of this, and I think about a team, I think it's important to recognize that oftentimes we're doing both, and that's not necessarily a bad thing as a team. So we're pulling all in the same direction when we're thinking as a team about moving our mission forward. And we'll talk a little bit about the mission at some point. Once we get through talking about norms, we'll hopefully move to the mission, whether it's tonight or the next time we're together. But if we're thinking about the process of moving forward or moving our mission forward, then as a unified team, we're pulling on the same side. But from time to time, your feelings of how we move the mission forward and my feelings about how we move the mission forward may look a little bit different. So in that process, we may be on opposite sides of the rope. Doesn't necessarily mean that's a bad thing. That push back and forth sometimes can help us to become stronger. Right? Many people use roping as part of their whole physical fitness program. Sometimes that idea of the pull back and forth gets us to a stronger end. But as long as in the end we're thinking that we're on the same side as far as the mission goes, then we're in a good place. So the organization entitled Leadership First defines a real team as a group of very different individuals who enjoy working together and who respect, care, and trust each other. Now, when we put a group of people together and they come together randomly to work together, the idea of enjoying working together is probably the hardest one for us to get to. I can't, in a group, mandate that Jonathan and I are going to work well together or we're going to enjoy working together, but there are components of our work together that we can work on. And to me, the first one when we look at this is around the respect piece. when people come together for a common cause, that idea of moving that mission, and the respect goes along with it, then we get to the rest of the way there. The trust comes along with that. If I respect that you're coming to the table with a positive purpose, that you're working toward the good of our mission, our children, whatever that looks like, and I respect that piece, then I can begin to build trust with you, and then we can go from there. Hopefully at some point we then begin to enjoy each other's company in the process, but at the very minimum we can be productive as a team. So how do we build that respect? There are a lot of different theories about what teams should look like and the components of a team, and I like this one around the 7 C's of building a winning team, but I'm not going to focus on it other than to point out that one of them is communication. And that's where I came in tonight. Right? We're coming here to talk about the communication component of this. And if we really truly want to be effective in what we do, how we communicate becomes an important factor with that. I'm going to ask that you all take one of the, yes. I'd like to say that I drew it myself, but you know what? Thanks to technology, I was even able to Google the stick figure. Oh, actually, Jonathan, can I just have one of them? Okay, great, thank you. All right, so I'm just going to ask you to bear with me for a little bit. If everyone, I hope I have enough. I think we've got 10 here, so good. All right, so if everyone has one of these, I'd like you to take and hold on to this little guy or gal. And for a moment, I'd like you to just think to yourself about a time when someone said something or did something that really stayed with you, and not in a positive way, that it really kind of hurt. It really upset you, and it stayed with you. Something that somebody said or did. And as you're thinking about that situation, and it can be personal, it can be work, it can be any environment, just think of a time that something really resonated that you still hold on to this day. It could have been from long ago, it could have been last week, it could have been this morning. But as you're thinking about that, what I'd like you to do, as you're thinking about that situation, is take this little guy and crumple it up. Now what I'd like you to do is to think about a time when someone did or said something that really made you feel good. That even days or weeks or years later, you think about that and it makes you feel really good. And as you're thinking about that really good feeling, that something that someone did or said, what I'd like you to do is to open this back up and smooth it out. Apron. I will, before I go on, I'm going to actually share with you the good story, because it actually was from someone here in Stoughton. So the reason I started actually working, or hired John Guilfoyle Public Relations, was because I was having a really difficult time with a parent who was looking for information about a discipline incident that happened at the high school, and she was an elementary parent and had no connection to the discipline, and she was just relentless. It wouldn't go away. And I finally reached out to a few colleagues looking to see if I could get some words of wisdom. And I called your former superintendent, Maggie Rizzi. And she happened to be driving that day. She was on vacation. I didn't realize when I called her on her cell phone. And when I apologized for bothering her on her vacation day, she was driving, she said, "Paul, friendship doesn't take a vacation." And I just thought, wow, that kind of made me feel really good to know that, you know, that superseded her vacation time to spend some time with me. And she actually gave me JGPR's telephone number, and we moved on from there. But just a statement like that, that for her was a throwaway, was something that made me feel really good and I held on to. In this particular case, you crumpled up the paper and then you uncrumpled it. What do we notice about this paper now as opposed to when I gave it to you?
Damaged.
I'm sorry?
Damaged.
Damaged?
Lasting effects.
Lasting effects? Yeah. No matter how much you were working to smooth out those wrinkles, you can't get them all out, right? And so I actually like to do this exercise. I've done it with my staff before. I do it every year. I did it every year with my new teachers. And we talked about the idea that, honestly, words do matter, right? And they stay with us. And so I look at this from multiple different directions. One of the ways I look at it is the fact, a reminder of myself that sometimes something I say or do is a throwaway, either positively or when I say something that ends up being hurtful and I think I'm being funny or I'm angry myself and I lash out, can have a much bigger effect than I honestly realize and can stay with someone. The other side of that, sometimes something just completely random that I did or said, someone may hold on to in a way that I never knew about, but made them feel good. The same, though, happens to other people. What I also like about this is it reminds me that I don't know about the other people's wrinkles. We talk about that as educators, that when we have our students coming into our classroom, we don't know what baggage they're bringing with us. Some of them have enough bags they could have their own valet, and it still wouldn't be enough to carry it all, right? We don't know what wrinkles they bring. But we also don't know what our staff members have as well. And we also don't know about everyone sitting at the table. Anything we say or do can be a trigger or make someone think about something that caused one of the wrinkles in their life. And there's a good chance that it's not going to be something that they're going to tell you about. If it's that deep and it's causing that kind of wrinkle, it's probably something internal that's not going to be easily shared. And so when we think about how we navigate conversations here with each other, if we can always keep in the back of our mind that we don't know what people's wrinkles look like and what they're thinking and where they're coming from when they sit at the table. That to me is always an important reminder. I always actually recommended when I did this with teachers, for example, that they kept it in their plan book or kept it in their desk drawer or someplace like that. If you consistently bring a notebook with you or a portfolio and you want to put it in there to remind yourself sometimes that when you're sitting at the table and sometimes the conversation is not going as smoothly as we think or someone is reacting in a way that surprises us, that it may not be what we said or did, it may be what they're bringing. Sometimes that's a good reminder for us. So leading in that direction or moving in that direction, recognizing that communication is going to be key for you to be an effective board and working in one direction, working for a purpose. With that in mind, I'd like you to take a moment and think about your why. It's a popular phrase these days, what's your why? Look for an image and Google that, and my gosh, loads of them came up. There are even books written and titled on it. But from your perspective, just think about, why did you decide to run for school committee, besides the salary? I know it's a nice little part-time gig that supplements, the projects and things that you're doing at home, maybe helps to put your kids through college. I mean, you've made a commitment to give up a couple of nights a month at the minimum, and then we've got negotiations, and we've got finance committee, and all those other wonderful things that are going on. You made a commitment to do this. There had to be some motivation for that. And it's personal to everybody, but understanding the why for yourself and for others understanding your why, I think, is important. And taking that one step further, in addition to the what is your why, also take a moment to think about, now that you're here, you made the commitment, you ran, you put your name out there, you're sitting at the table, what is it that you hope you can accomplish or help to accomplish during your tenure? And for this one, I'm going to ask you to take a moment to actually write it down. So we'll pass them index cards in either direction, and you can just write down both of those. What is your why? Why did you decide to run for school committee? And for those of you who are administrators here joining us, you can actually think about, why did you decide to go into administration? Because we know, I went because I thought gray would look good on me. There's just no doubt about it. Why did you make the choice to be in the position you're in so that you're sitting at the table here, and then also what do you hope to accomplish during your tenure? And while it's somewhat personal, I am going to ask people to share. So just be thoughtful of that as well. Because I think that part of the process is not only understanding ourselves what our why is, but for other people to understand why you're sitting here at the table. When I understand what Armando brings to the table or why he's here, it helps me to understand his perspective when he's talking about certain issues, when he's passionate about something that we're discussing at the meeting, or just in general comes and shows up each time he's here and gives me a smile when he walks in, whatever that looks like. Yeah, I'm watching how many are writing, and I'm going to say it looks like most people are wrapping up. And I am going to ask for them so that I can help to put them together afterwards. But I am going to ask that we take a little bit of time now to share those. Because as I said, I think that as we move forward, understanding each other's why can really be helpful. So I'm going to ask if there's someone who's willing to maybe share their why first. Anyone? Bueller? Okay.
Why? I thought I could present a different viewpoint. Not any better or any worse, but a different viewpoint, and hopefully help everyone be able to see with a wider horizon, and perhaps come from that with a better vision how to proceed and go forward. I have an engineering background, not in education or anything else, so I just felt that offering a different viewpoint, like I said, not better viewpoint, but just a different one in which people can think in different ways, get out of their box and you know, what's the saying, draw outside of the lines. That's what I hope to, that's why. And I just hope I'm able to help, that's all. Somehow be able to have an extra pair of hands when someone needs it. Stoughton, the schools, teachers, principals, superintendent, chair, my peers. Just be able to share and help if I can.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else?
I'll share
Sure.
So I ran to make a meaningful change in my community. I wanted to make sure that, my child who's in the school system and all the children in Stoughton are learning in a very positive and productive environment. My goals for this year is, one, put together and pass some meaningful policies that will be beneficial to the students, teachers, and families. Another goal that I have is that, I'm in finance and, really structure a budget that will, build a strong future for our community, but also not sacrificing our ideals on, where we want to see ourselves.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, I ran because I was hoping to create schools that educate the whole child. And I think as an educator, I see how students learn differently. And I want to make sure that Stoughton schools offer opportunities for all students and however they learn. And so that they gain a love of learning, that they want to go to school and they like going to school and they talk positively about the schools. And I think that we just need to think about the whole child.
Excellent. Thank you.
The novel, My Thesis by Chris Shannon. I had two, but thanks to Jen, I added a quick third because what you said really resonated with me. First was to continue to move the district's progress to ensure we prepare every Stoughton student to live their best possible future. By ensuring a safe environment psychologically, physically, ensure that all students can access and are appropriately challenged by the curriculum, and ensure that they are represented in the curriculum and in the school environment. Two, continue to move the district toward efficient use of resources for maximum impact. That includes data-informed policy and fiscal decisions and stewardship, innovating in a way that adds value and not for the sake of change, building a strong, diverse talent pipeline and see it as a model employer. And then the third one I added, Jen, was continue to build pride. Stoughton has always had strong pride in its schools, and just to continue to build that pride and that trust with the community, with the students, and with the staff.
Oh, you wrote really fast.
English major.
That's awesome. So I'm going to look to, our administrators were doing the same task, and so I know we were talking about a school committee workshop, but if anyone is willing to maybe share a little bit of their why, that would be great. I think it's important for you all to know that too.
So I'll go real quickly first. This is an exercise I've actually done once before, many, many years ago, and the same thing always comes back. So it might sound a little idealist, but why become an administrator? To deliver for students. That's the job at the end of the day. And then the second, the try to accomplish is, especially today, I think public education is under so much attack from so many different corners. So it is the deal breaker, and we have to continue to remind everybody around us, and that's part of my job, right? The public relations part of reminding folks about really discussing the good things that are going on, because it can be so much easier to talk about the negative things that go on, because that's what the news wants to listen to, or that's what the anti-public education people want to hear, instead of publicizing. And I'm not saying put anything under the rug. You still have to deal with those issues, but you have to do it in a way where you're balancing that, because kids should wake up every day to a positive story and go to bed every day with a positive story. And unfortunately, that's not what we're doing in America right now.
Yeah. Very, very true. Anyone else? Juliet?
My why is if given an administrator to be an advocate and a champion for students, particularly those who can't be their own.
I love that. It's great. We've only three others. I want to look to all of you.
Okay. So when I never actually intended to go in administration, but I was given an opportunity by the school district I worked in New York to join a cohort of actually two people, where they were going to send us for our CAGs and do different things to develop us as leaders. And I remember the superintendent giving the sales pitch, and it was really about having a bigger impact and being that person that always kept the focus on what's right for kids, as opposed to letting special interests get in the way, or having the mission usurped by people that didn't necessarily focus on what's good for kids. And it always resonated with me, and it's something I always come back to if I need to refocus on what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. And it was very impactful, and that's what pulled me into the profession.
Great. Thank Thank you. Maybe Mark?
Sure. So my why is really similar to what some other people said. It's the same why as the reason that I taught. This is I guess, maybe the more generous half of my personality. It's to have a positive impact on students' lives. So when I was a teacher, it just meant the students that I had in my class. When I became an administrator, it meant the students who were under my care as an assistant principal or in my whole building as a principal. And at the district level, I see my why as the same thing. Although I'm not in a building, half of a building with kids, I still see my why as positive impact on student lives. The other half of my person, I'm very competitive. I was a coach, so when I was a middle school principal, I didn't want to have a good middle school. I wanted the best middle school, and I want to help to make the best district a model district, a district that other districts are like. That place is doing it right. We want to be like them. So that's just me being honest.
Fantastic.
Oh yeah, sure.
I worked in private sector for over 20 years in finance and then on the town side, and then was recruited by the schools. And it really occurred to me as a parent and a former foster parent, my love is what I think a lot about kids' mental health and their happiness. And so in my role, if there's anything that I can do when I hear about what everybody else designs or needs in their lane, I work really hard to figure out how we can get that for them to do their job, because I know the end result. And my last piece on here is, in my role, I can see the results, not all the time, but I can see the results when I can try to figure out through some wizardry in finance, or whatever it is, how I can save over here to get the money for that so that they can get the kids that. And I love it when I see, whether it's the newsletter or go to a presentation or there's a play or whatever else, I say, oh, I'm so glad we could figure out how to get them that, how happy those kids are. So that's what drives me to do finance in schools.
Fantastic. I think it was important to hear everybody's why, because I think as you listened, there were some commonalities. And the reason why I asked you to write it down, because I think it also helps us to kind of frame our thoughts when we're actually putting them in writing, but also the idea of kind of what Chris did, where it's like, oh, wait a minute, what Jennifer said is, I want to add that to it. Right? I didn't want to just kind of go around the table and everyone say, well, what you said. He already said what I was going to say. By everyone putting it down in writing, it gave you the opportunity to hear that really is a commonality here for everybody. What are some of those commonalities? There was one overarching that came on over and over again.
Improve students' lives.
There you go. It was said differently by different people, but the end result was the children. You're all here to make sure that the children receive a better education. Some of you talked about the financial end of that, making sure the resources are there to do that, making sure the innovations happen. Some of you were talking about the whole child. You're talking about making sure that every child is heard and that those children who come in with diverse or different backgrounds or needs are also addressed. We heard mental health come out of that. But again, what we heard was children. So when we come back to that rope analogy at the beginning in the tug of war, while there may be discussions that go on in this room about what's the best next step, what's the best curriculum we should look at, we only have a limited amount of finances, what should our priorities be for those? In the end, every single one of you is coming to that discussion with the premise that I'm here to help make a better education for the kids who live in Stoughton. And so on those days when you're feeling frustrated because we're perhaps going in different directions or we're not coming to consensus, I think it's really important to kind of remind yourselves of that. That's what everyone's purpose was. That's what everyone's why was when we talked about it. So thinking about that kind of yin and yang sometimes, I think it's important to then move into something, this like conversation around norms. I'm actually binge watching Cheers these days, and so yeah, hadn't seen it in a long time, and so I missed Norm. Why are norms important? We're talking about the idea of building them tonight for you as a committee, but why are they important? Interesting. I like that. Liability. Huh. Keep social order. Yes.
They're agreed upon.
Yes.
Foundation we can always go back to.
Yes.
That make the meeting run smoother.
There you go. Yeah. When we have some agreed upon norms, as we talked about, it can help to make the meeting run smoother. Whenever you put this many people into a room and we ask to be decision makers, there's an opportunity for us to see things differently and for us to disagree sometimes, or for us to let our emotions overcome our conversation. And so when we have norms in place, it's one of those, as Chris said, used the term agreed upon, it's a way for us to decide this is how we are going to interact with each other, even when we're having a conversation that perhaps might be one that could be a little bit emotional, or can be controversial, or can be problematic. We're going to at least make sure we adhere to these norms when we do that. Mm-hmm. And so having those norms upon and agreeing upon them in advance allows us that opportunity. The other nice thing I like about norms is that if things are escalating, if emotions are running high, referring back to the norms rather than calling somebody else out, I think is a nice way to kind of bring order back to the situation. Once norms are in place, I frequently suggest that if we're feeling uncomfortable in the conversation or in the meeting in general, it's okay to say, can we take a 5-minute break? Can we take a stretch break? And maybe while we do, it might be a nice idea for us to all kind of revisit the norms so that when we come back, we're feeling good and we know, how we want to proceed with the meeting moving forward. I'm not saying, Joe, you need to settle down and, and follow the norms. I'm just saying, can we revisit them and come back together? Sometimes calling out the norms rather than the person can sometimes help us to recenter. And so I like having that for that reason alone. I think once we set these norms, it's a good idea for you to remind yourselves of them at the start of each meeting. I used to put them on all my agendas. I had them, the first thing I did when I got to King Philip, we had a summer retreat and the school committee set their norms. I met with my admin team and the admin team set their norms. And I'll tell you a side story for that, just as to why the norms were so important. So you've all done interviews before for administrators. If you haven't sat on one, you've probably seen them along the way, or you've been the one interviewed. When you've sat through that process, you start to get to an understanding of what the district's real needs are based on the questions they're asked. So when I was interviewing to go to King Philip, I didn't receive one question about curriculum instruction in any of the interviews that I sat in. I was asked about technology, so I guess it's kind of like a sidebar. I was asked about special education, and then I discovered that they had had a bad budget the year before, and there was a lot of concern about the special education costs, so I was asked from that perspective. I was asked about budget, and there were a whole lot of questions about climate and culture. This should have been a red flag for me, okay? But it wasn't. And we moved forward, and I was appointed as superintendent. And then I got to about a week or two before I took over as superintendent, and I was told, as I was asking some questions in visiting the district, that the admin team didn't meet together because there were certain people on the team that couldn't be in the same room with other people on the team. And I thought to myself, this can't happen. That it was the truth. There were people that had such conflicts with each other that the previous administration had chosen to have separate meetings rather than bring people together. And I thought, how can we productively get to consensus if we're not even all in the same room? And so it gave me pause, and I thought to think about how do I then build a culture where people are comfortable coming together, and the people are the same. Some people eventually chose to move on, but that first day that I was there, the people were the same, and we were coming in that summer. And so the first thing we did was spend a lot of time talking about what it would mean for us to all be in the same room and work collaboratively. What are the things that would mean something to us if that were the case? And so I would really like you to take a moment And if the Post-its are still around, take a moment first to write on a Post-it or two. And if we need more, like I said, they're all around the table, and I've got more up here I can pass down. But take a Post-it or two and write one or two things that, not just for this committee, but anytime you're working in a big group toward a common goal, what would be some things that you would hope that everyone would adhere to so that the work would go more smoothly? Anything that you can think of. We're gonna pull it all together, but stop by thinking a couple of things. Lost my cursor. Oh, there it is, finally. Okay. I'm going to do this. We're going to work collaboratively, so don't think you have to come up with all of them all by yourself. We're going to see if we get some commonalities here along the way, but just jot a couple of ideas down. And then I'm going to try to type them. You're going to see lots of mistakes and spelling errors as I type really fast and really awkwardly, but we'll see if I can capture them as you're talking. Anyone want to share one that they wrote down? Yes, Jane.
Respect people's time.
Good. And there are no right or wrong answers. We're putting these down for now. We're just collecting everyone's thoughts, and then we're going to decide if we like all of these, if we want to consolidate some of them together, if we are some that we're not in agreement on. We'll come back to that, but let's just capture people's thoughts right now.
Kind of in the same realm as that, not to monopolize the time, allow other viewpoints.
I want to build off of that because I think it's related.
Yeah.
Step up, step back. That means if you tend to be a wallflower, force yourself to be a part of the conversation. If you tend to be the first one to speak up, step back and let others speak. Share the mic is another way of saying that, but it's really to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to be heard and that you voice your opinion so that you are heard rather than letting the conversation go.
Okay.
Listen to understand.
I like that one.
Assume best intentions.
Yep, ditto.
Good answer. Good. I love the Family Feud for that.
Yeah, I know. I think it might be helpful to have like frequency.
Can we say that one again, please? What did you-
Assume best intentions.
I had that same one. So did Joe. Yeah.
Be meaningful. Intentional, I guess, would be better. Be intentional.
That should be intentional, isn't it?
Yeah.
Embrace challenging conversations, but speak with one voice.
Phrase. Challenging.
What do you mean by like speak with one voice? Say that.
Externally, that once a decision is made, whether you voted for it or not, it was the vote of the school committee. We represent the school committee. But inside here, it is a stronger decision if we think about it from multiple angles rather than just rubber stamping something. And I don't think this group does that, but I just like to name that norm.
Yeah, it's absolutely a problem in many groups. 3-1, 3-2 split in the vote, and the two people who didn't vote in favor are now out in the public vocally letting people know that they didn't support the decision, and yet the decision has to move forward. We were recently brought into work with a school committee that actually had taken a vote, and once 2 meetings later, it was about closing a school. 2 meetings later, 2 of the people, so seven-member board, so 4-3 split. 2 of the 4 were not at a meeting, and the 3 people called for another vote and reversed the decision. That's really problematic. You're talking about closing a school because of budgetary and other issues, and a month later, calling the vote again when you know that you didn't, the majority votes are absent for that particular meeting. There are a whole lot of ethics questions that came about from that, but clearly that was not a committee that was all rowing in the same direction and working collaboratively. So the idea of speaking one voice afterwards, I think, is one that a lot of committees look to add to their norms. Others?
Celebrate your wins and each other. Well, it'll be our wins, you know. But.
Consider all options.
Sorry, as I add more, the type gets smaller.
Yeah. Can I just add something to Joe's, and Joe, tell me if this does not belong piggyback to yours, but with be meaningful and intentional, number 7, I also read that to mean, like, make sure your comment brings value add to the conversation.
Yeah, for me, intentional is exactly that.
Okay.
I mean, we can all. We want to take the conversation to the next level. So the idea is that, when you town meeting, for example, finally we're hearing things like, can we, if somebody's already said what you're thinking of saying, don't come up, right? You just gulp it. You could always say it to somebody after the meeting, hey, I was thinking the same way, Jillian. But don't take up the time, because you are taking up people's time with it. So add to the deliberation. Right. No. No, that's a whole different animal.
I've been at committees where part of the purpose was to let people know what their opinions were for re-election time. And so when one person made a comment that was positive, everyone had to jump on board so that everyone knew that they also supported that issue. And it took so long for everyone to agree to everybody's statement over and over again that you never got anything accomplished, because they were too busy making sure that everyone knew I love children, or everyone knew that I'm all for this new curriculum. So being intentional, I think, is a good point.
I was going to add, and I'll just say it in spoken language, I don't think it's a problem with this committee, but I think it's good to have it as a norm, which is do your homework. Right? So if you get something, timing is always a problem, we know that, but you got to come in prepared, or you got to make sure that can we table this because some of us aren't prepared. Or haven't had enough time, or have a lot more questions we need addressed. So I'm calling it do your homework.
Yep.
I'd like to add to speak only for yourself. Don't speak on behalf of populations that you may or may not know about, but speak from your own experience, and then speak from fact and not rumor. And I think given the prevalence of social media in Stoughton, that's an important thing for all of us to keep in mind.
Can we put something as a vision of the graduate in there?
I do appreciate the social media comment. We, at some point, want to talk about that. I'm still trying to understand when social media became a primary source. Can anyone help me with that one? When does social, I read it on Facebook, therefore it must be true.
Generational.
Okay, 2020, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
18, 19, 20.
The pandemic, yeah. Let's be honest, the pandemic, 3 o'clock in the morning, being home with my kids all day, a bottle of wine and a laptop were a bad combination. Just put it out there, okay? I know when this is being recorded, I get to be a little bit irreverent from time to time, but okay, I'm retired now, I can do that. But it really hit ahead for me, quite honestly, and I, as a committee, you have to appreciate this. During, soon after the pandemic, we had a situation where, as all of you know, the health curriculum in sex ed is the only area that parents can currently opt out their children from, right? So you have to make the curriculum available for them. And so we literally, in King Philip, had a trimester of health in 8th grade. And they met once every 6 days. So you know they were getting a whopping maybe 12 classes of health, and you were covering 15 different topics during that piece of it. And somewhere in there, bless you, was the sex talk, okay? Covered at a very surface level. The teacher left their slides on the counter in the office for people to come in and review the slides. The first one was basically a definition of terms. And it says, in some cases, instead of referring to boys and girls, I will refer to people with penises and people with ovaries. We're talking biology here. So as in one slide that says, when you hit puberty, people with ovaries will begin to ovulate on a 28-day cycle, okay, and et cetera. So there are a few slides like that. Somebody came in, took a picture of this one slide without looking at the context of the rest of this, and posted on Facebook that this has now gone too far. Now the schools are calling the students people with penises and people with ovaries and encouraging the kids to call each other that. I can assure you, at no point did we say, people with penises in the back of the room, settle down. No one was doing this. But this now was on Facebook, and so I'm telling you a true story here, on Facebook, and it went viral. I must have received 20 different calls or emails with people outraged that I would allow this to happen. What was concerning to me was not one person asked if it was happening. Mm-hmm. It was absolutely not happening. Kids were not referring to themselves that way. Teachers were not referring to kids that way. That's absolutely absurd. But somebody took a picture, and well, obviously the slide was there, therefore it must be true, and then off to the races. This is what's going on. So you more than ever are dealing with those kinds of issues outside of this committee. And so I do think that where we may not have thought about that years ago, having a norm or two about beyond the meeting is not necessarily a bad idea. But again, these are your norms, not mine. Every committee comes up with something slightly different, but I think they should be ones that you're comfortable with. Mm-hmm. Are there others that people wrote down or thought about that we want to capture here? Then we're going to talk about whether we like all these. I'm going to show you some sample norms that other groups have put together, and we're going to. Joe, is it 8 o'clock that we're?
Yes.
Yeah, we can go, yeah.
I thought you would tell me 6:30 to 8.
Yeah, 6:30 to 8. Yep.
My watch says it's 20 of 8.
Yeah.
Am I okay?
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
okay.
keeping you.
Sorry,
Great, okay.
You started a little late, that's
Yeah. Okay. No, Joe gave me the the watch.
Make sure, I'm not,
Okay,
not
yeah.
cutting you off.
No, I just want to make sure that. Okay, great. Thank you. So, take a look at any others that we want to add first.
Speak to others with respect.
Yeah. No, I figured, yeah. I was going to add that too, Jillian, thank you.
ESPECT.
Do we want to have one about how we document our meetings in terms of like minutes or?
That's not our charter, that's not our, like, rules that help.
Yeah, maybe that's something to think about another time, but I'm thinking about, like how we archive our meetings. I don't know, I'm trying to figure out like where I'm going with this, but like what I don't want is, if I say something like really offhand, I go down a rabbit hole, very likely, and then later in the minutes say, oh, that never happened, I didn't do that, or we'll just remove that because I realize now that might not paint me in the best light. It's like trying to, like being true to or honoring what happens here. I'm trying to figure out, like, how do I phrase that as a norm? And maybe I can't, so it doesn't belong here, but
So operating procedures, or, looking at procedures, protocol, and practices, those are things that we can also talk about.
Okay,
At
so
some
that's
point. Yeah, I mean, certainly if that's the direction the committee wants to come in, and you want to talk about, this is how we keep our minutes, this is how we run things, there are procedures and protocols. Obviously, policy is something that you set.
Yeah.
But even within policy, there are still like rules that we follow. When I think about classroom rules with teachers, I would talk about, they would often have one or two overarching, we treat each other with respect. That's our policy in this classroom. Everyone treats each other with respect. But there are rules to help run things more orderly, like you raise your hand and ask permission before you sharpen your pencil, or you sign out before you go to the bathroom, or the rules can change. The policies tend to be the broad things that we really believe in and what we stand for. The rules are just kind of what govern us. Mm-hmm. So there may be some things that you want to talk about as far as minutes and archiving and things of that nature that we can look at it in a different perspective. But the norms are more about how we interact with each other during discussions and conversations, if that makes sense.
Thank you for clarifying
Okay.
that. I've got some parking lot items now that I'll just note and
Great, perfect.
Let's move on.
That's at the end of when I collect back at the end of the night what we're hoping to accomplish. We can work toward that next time out.
I thought you meant like no revision of the history. History is history. It's set in stone.
Represents
You can't-
reality.
Yeah, right. No do-overs. Once you've said it, it's out.
But
Change.
I think that the sense of norms is, what are the, I mean, we're up to 15 now. What are the 5 to 7 things that the committee
Yeah.
is asking that all of us, when we are at this table, working in the best interest of kids, which we've already defined earlier, we have those key phrases, and they're literally phrases and meaningful. And I'm as much of that as the committee, so I'm not taking myself out of that. I have to work by those same norms as a member of the administration. I think, and we have to be very careful of revisions and stuff like that. And I know that the committee in recent months, that's been an issue that's come up that we need to just have a hard no on. The fact is, that's the minutes. If you want to add an explanation for this current meeting about the last meeting's agenda, you can do that if you want. Take your personal privilege and do that, but you can't go back and change archived minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a procedural piece there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I personally would, I jotted it down, the no history revisions. I think that,
Take it out.
yeah,
Take it out. It's a red herring here. It doesn't belong, you're right.
all right. Anything, and I apologize, it's kind of wonky with but I just wanted to capture it some way, and this was probably the easiest way to do it. I could type for you. And I promise the next time I come back, I will have a clean copy for you, and then we're going to do a final thumbs up or down at that point. But tonight, thoughts about these? Any others?
Can I have them?
Absolutely.
Approach differences from a place of curiosity.
I love how that's phrased, but that reminds me of the one that Armando said, listen to understand. So I feel those two can be
I think
coupled.
there's a couple in here that can be combined.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
I was going to take this back and make it all.
Yeah, I'm going to try to clean it up a little bit for you, but you recognizing at some points that if you tell me that 1 and 4 seem to be alike, I'm just picking numbers here, then I'll make a note of that, and we can try to combine those together. Are there any that need further clarification, that now that they're up there, that we're like, I just want to understand that a little bit better? Are there any that you see that you think are kind of redundant?
Yeah, I think we've mentioned a few. So I would,
1 and 2 can be combined.
Yep, 1 or 2 could be.
Yeah.
I'm putting them together so that way I know to try to.
So allow for other viewpoints, listen to understand, and approach differences from a place of curiosity. They're all kind of the same realm of,
Think bucket.
yeah.
And what was the other one? Allow for other viewpoints, listen to understand, and you said there was a third one that you thought was?
Approach differences from a place of curiosity.
Where am I?
The last one.
13, okay.
Sorry, I should just say numbers.
All right. I'll clean that up afterwards, but I know that those three, I'll kind of put that together to, and actually, you might find, when I show you some other norms that other people have said, you might say, oh, wait a minute, that works.
Can you get rid of those extra spaces so the font's a little bigger? Sorry, I didn't
Oh, I'm
bring my
sorry.
glasses.
Yep.
That helps, thank you.
Yeah. No.
Feel like the step up, step back, and respecting time.
Yep, yeah, I think can all go into the same bucket.
Yeah.
Step up, step back, and
Respect time.
respect time was
Yeah, so number 4 can go with number 1.
Okay.
Well, can I suggest one as well?
Yes.
Basically knowing when to take a timeout. Sorry. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
things
Yeah.
get heated. and Sometimes the group needs to take a timeout.
My favorite wines is Mommy's Timeout.
Look at that. Just keeps going in the wrong space. Okay.
Still a lot up there, guys.
Yep.
We can
Yeah.
keep working at it. Be easier when they can see it.
In the interest of time, I am going to play a little bit with that. I want to show you some of the others that others have come up with, and see if there's anything on that list that you haven't come up with that you think also resonates in some way.
So the very first time I got a job as a contracted full-time teacher was in Richmond, Virginia. We went to something called a convocation, which for those of you who don't know, it's like a giant pep rally for teachers and staff where you start the school year and you have like a theme. And so I'm a brand-new teacher sitting with all my colleagues, and the brand-new superintendent comes out and said, the theme this year is students first. And I said, well, what were they last year? Third, fifth? Did they make the top 10?
Well, but interestingly, all of you talked about the importance of students when you were talking about your why.
Mm-hmm.
So that may be a given, that you've all shared that, or it
Yeah.
might be something that you feel that you need to remind each other of, that sometimes when we're talking about things, in the end, we need to be putting the students first.
Yeah, that's a good one. And the other one I think that's interesting, and this is the one that's hard to do, but you do it when, in certain instances, especially when there's respect, you agree to disagree. Where one of the two people talking at some point will say, you know what, we're at the point where we just need to agree to disagree. And you move on to the next battle, to the next situation.
I always like the one, challenge the issue, not the person.
That's a good one. I like that one.
And I think you came up with it and phrased it a different way, but the assumed positive intent.
Yeah.
Obviously, be respectful. You have a lot. Respect came up a lot, by the way, as you were phrasing. When we come back together, if respect is in there, I think it's going to be important for us to talk about what does it mean, what does that look like?
Agreed.
We've all talked about respect. We should respect each other, be respectful. But if I'm being respectful, what does that mean? Because our thoughts about that may be a little bit different. And so I'm feeling like you're not honoring that piece of the norm, and someone else feels like they are. So we may have to, while we can keep it as broad as be respectful, we may as a group need to define what some of these terms mean as we adopt them. No one said have fun. I heard some laughing tonight. There were times when you were all chuckling here and there. you're giving your time to be here for the benefit of kids. There's nothing wrong from time to time having some fun with that. I mean, you still have to be part of the meeting. You still have things that you have to get accomplished. And, you know, we're not going to go off track so far that we're going to be here an extra hour, but it's okay to laugh a little bit and to enjoy each other's company and to have a pleasant evening if you're giving your time that way.
Well, that's a really good point. And one of the selfish reasons that I joined school committee was to, better understand, because I'd been on the teacher side of the equation. I'd never been on the administrative or the school committee side of the equation. So understanding that piece of the ecosystem, but then also just to meet some of my fellow neighbors and community members and get to know them. I wanted to build my social network in Stoughton.
Exactly. There are a lot of peripheral reasons that you're all here. But again, as I said, you're spending the evenings together. You don't have to go out for dinner afterwards or beverages or coffee, but you should be able to have a little bit of fun while you're together without, again, derailing the agenda and the process. One that's not here that was brought up another group, and I thought it was fascinating, and they chose to adopt it, was basically something to the effect of, it's okay to go to the Bahamas. No, I like that. Yeah. You're thinking vacation, miss a meeting. I like that thinking. Hey, yeah. No, it was a recognition that at times, for whatever reasons, we may zone out. We may get distracted. I don't know if you have policies regarding things like your computers and cell phones, if you've all agreed that during the meeting you're going to shut them off, or in fact everyone brings their laptop and they're taking notes and they're reading their agenda on it. But if there are devices, sometimes we may get distracted. Or what if you come to this meeting and a close family member is ill? And you left the house knowing that someone's going to be checking on them, and you're wondering if everything's okay, or if they're going to have to go to the hospital, or right. Those kinds of things are life. And so we may be here at the meeting in person, but it doesn't necessarily mean that our mind is here the whole time. And so we're having this conversation, and I turn and I say, "And Chris, did you have anything to add to that?" And you're in that, oh, doggone it moment, you just called me out. Now I've got to respond to this. And what were they saying? Sometimes it's okay to say, you know what, my apologies. I was in the Bahamas for a minute, and or however you want to say that. I was visiting the classrooms or something. Can we rephrase that question again? And I apologize, and move on. Now, again, I'm not suggesting it. I just thought it was an interesting one that a committee or two thought was worth putting out there. It was actually... I haven't seen it for school committee, but it was actually for administrative committee. And the administrators are saying, look, I'm here at a meeting with the superintendent, but I've got a building full of kids back there. And when I left, they were hauling 4 kids into the office over a major fight that happened in the cafeteria. And while I'm here, I'm also monitoring to see if they're going to call me on this or what's going on that. So just something for you to think about, whether it's here now or, again, administrators, if you're at some point setting your own norms at some point. Are there any here that I should highlight that you're thinking of that you'd like to add, or as I'm consolidating?
I think student first should definitely be there.
Okay.
I like the disagree with the issue, not the person,
Okay.
or challenge the issue.
Challenge the issue, not the person.
And have fun.
I do like have fun. Sometimes I need to dial that back a little, but I get a little too irreverent, but it's in the spirit of let's enjoy each other's time together.
I confess, the resolve the issues during the meeting, not in the parking lot, is mine. It's one I always put out there when we're having, whenever I set norms with a group that I'm working with, because so often we hear things like, we have been complaining about this forever. We've been talking about this for, with who? How many times have we had conversations, or have we known about conversations that are happening in the teacher's room or in the parking lot or at a barbecue, but no one is bringing it to the people who can actually resolve the situation, right? You have a meeting here, resolve the situation. It shouldn't be 3 or 4 people in the parking lot afterwards rehashing it and talking about, okay, I don't like how that went down. What are we going to do next? That's not productive. That doesn't get the situation resolved. It just perpetuates the problem. So it's one that like I said, I personally like, but again, these are your norms, not mine.
One thing, like at my work, always is like, don't complain about something without providing
A solution, yeah. I always like that.
Tried bolding and it didn't show up any dockets, so I figured I had to do a different color here. Okay, so you say, don't present a problem?
Yeah, don't present a problem without
The possible.
a possible solution.
Okay.
Suggest we change that, be more positive. Present a solution if you're bringing a problem.
Yeah.
Okay, solution.
I will look at that. Like I said, I'm going to go back. I'm going to try to take the ones that you talked about consolidate them together. You still have a long list here. I'll take the ones from the other list, add them in, and then what we're going to do when we come back is look at those again and decide if some of them can be trimmed a little bit more, if they're redundant, or if you want to keep all of them. And then you can have an informal vote on whether or not this is what you want to live by for your meetings moving forward. Then what we want to do next is talk about, then, if you voted on them, how do we make sure that we're following them down the road? Is this something that you start each meeting by reading? Is this something that's on the agenda? How do you codify this so that it becomes part of the work that you do? So we should have that conversation. Armando?
Frame it, put it on the wall.
Yeah.
That work.
Quite honestly, that's what I did in my office. Like I said, when I had that first really uncomfortable admin meeting, and we spent the whole morning talking about the norms that we were going to live by, I typed them up. I went to Staples and turned it into a poster and threw it on the bulletin board in my office, which is where the boardroom table was that we met at. And so it was big for everyone to see. And it was helpful at first. At first, people really needed, not that it wasn't helpful afterwards, but once people started to get used to just actually living the norms, we didn't have to refer to them as much. But there were times when people were feeling uncomfortable and could simply say, can we take a break, review the norms, and then come back to work again? And that wasn't then calling anybody out. It was simply saying, I think it's time for us to remind ourselves that we have this agreement that we're all going to follow. And I liked that. It was less threatening to refer to the norms than to have people calling each other out or feeling uncomfortable about that. Just about 8 o'clock, so I think this is basically a good breaking point. What I wanted to share with you what my thinking was for next. Depending on how long we took tonight, what I wanted to move into was also your mission. So I think that as a committee, it's important for you to know the mission of your district and to live the mission of your district. So I'd like to take a little bit of time with you to talk about what does the mission mean to all of you, and then, in fact, ask you to think about what your mission is as a committee. The mission that you have as a committee should be designed to move the mission of the district forward. I spent the day at a collaborative today working with their admin team, and there were a lot of different departments. And what I actually asked them all to do is to write the mini missions. So even looking at the food service director, if the mission is to provide a high-quality education for all of our kids, the food service department, what's your mission to help move that mission forward? Well, we need to provide hot, nutritious meals for our students so they have full bellies so that they're better able to learn. Great. That's a great mission for your department that helps move the whole mission forward. So we're going to be thinking the next time we come together, what is the school committee's mini mission that helps move the district mission forward? All right. With that said, if you would share with me the index cards that you created, and the Post-it notes of things that you're hoping that we get to or talk about, so that I can help to put those together. As I said, if I'm coming to meet with you, it's important that you walk away feeling like you got something from the meeting that it was helpful to you.
Following directions. Yeah.
And we keep the little guy.
Keep the little guy, that's right.
Take a picture of hers and send her one of her index card to you.
Oh, okay, sure. Great, thank you.
I'll pass this here, stickies.
Oh, yep.
Extra stickies.
You guys are great.
Back at
Yep.
you.
Yeah, I have a whole backpack full of supplies I bring, stickies and index cards and markers and lions and tigers and bears, oh my. We'll bring my elephant in the room back next time. All right, is that a good breaking point for everybody this evening?
I think so. Does that work for everybody? Okay. Thank you, Paul, so much. We look forward to seeing you again in August. And with that, I would like to close our meeting and once again need to let the public know that our next regularly scheduled meeting of the school committee is actually on the agenda. It says August 26th. That is another special meeting. The next regular scheduled meeting is the 9th of September here at the district office at 6 p.m. So with that, may I have a motion to adjourn? All right, motion was made by Armando. Do I have a second? Seconded by Jen Sears. All those in favor, roll call vote.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion carries 4-0. Thank you all so much for your presence and early arrival for today's meeting. We adjourned at 8:02.